All right, thanks for joining us today. We're going to be looking at Equipment 360 Mobile Mechanic 101, an introduction to time cards and work order entry. All right, so the agenda for today, we're going to learn about the life of a work order, entering time, parts, notes, photos, and meter readings on the iPad. And we're going to see how to view equipment details, maintenance history, referenced parts lists, backlog work items, and warranties while in the field. And we're going to see the life of a Mobile Mechanic time card, including the review process in the manager system. Okay, so I'm running Mobile Mechanic, and this is being reflected directly onto the computer. So this is actually me using Mobile Mechanic as you see it. This is kind of how we're starting off. This is the main Mobile Mechanic page. Right now it's blank. This is for today. If you want, right, we can go back and we can actually select which day we want to view or which day that we want to actually create a time card for. So you can see the past, we have Monday, we have an enter time card, Tuesday, one in review, and Wednesday approved. But let's focus on today for now. So let's take a look at the mobile work order search. So if I'm a mechanic, I can actually search for equipment in the field, view open work orders, and I can create a work order for a piece of equipment. So I can search for equipment. I can use this search bar, and let's look at 10-100. So right here, this is just a quick search bar. I can search for equipment from all of my equipment. I can search for equipment at specific jobs. So again, if I'm a mechanic and I know that I need to go to the Kyle Sale job, that's what I'm scheduled to today, I can go and filter out any equipment that's here and look for any open work orders, or I can look for a piece of equipment and I can create a work order directly from here. I can also just look directly from work orders, all the work orders, and I can sort by equipment, job, status, or work order number. So right now we're filtering by work order number, but if I have specific statuses I'm looking for, I want to look for open work orders, or if I want to look for work orders that are closed that I may need to reopen, or I may need to look for any work order with a status of waiting for parts, I can come through, work complete, open, waiting on parts. I can look here and I can find any kind of work order with a status that I'm looking for. Okay, so that is kind of the common search function if I'm just looking for something, right? But let's take a look at adding a work order. So by hitting this plus work order button, I can take a look at the current work orders that are in the system. Now these can have been created by a mechanic already on the iPad from another user or myself, or they can actually be created in the manager system, and then that will sync with the iPad, and I can see that here. So again, already created work orders could have been already created from myself, another user, or from the manager system. And all of these will be updated when the mechanic syncs. So if he's out in the field with no Wi-Fi, anything that's already on his iPad will be there. Anything that's needed to be, or anything that was created after that, once he gets back into Wi-Fi and hits sync, anything will be that's new in the system will be downloaded to his iPad. But let's take a look at some already created work orders. So if I want to work on this work order 577, take a look at this, and I can take a look at the priority, status of the work order, the equipment ID associated with it, the job, and a description of what the work order is, right? What the mechanic needs to actually do. So right here we're looking at a PM1, a PM2, and a PM3, and some backlog items. On the enter time, I can actually enter my time for each perform. I can add work items if I need to add something. I can add travel time, and I can add item from a backlog. I can also enter parts. So right here, via the manager system, these parts were already put into the work order for the specific PM1, PM2, and PM3 for this work order. So you can see that these are parts already associated with this work order. So if you already have your PM set up in the manager system, when the mechanic comes in, he already knows what work codes he has to do for PM1, PM2, PM3. He can also see what parts are needed for that specific work order for those PMs. He can, again, also add parts, or if he needs to run out and buy something, he can add receipt and send a photo of the receipt and put in the price of the part, which will then be costed to the work order. He can also add photos, and he can add notes. The work complete is, again, when the work order is done, he will hit work complete, and that will go to the manager system, and we'll show you a little bit of that in a second. So if we go back to general information, again, this is an already created work order in the system. We take a look here, we can also, if you hit this button right here, this just gives you information on the machine itself. So let's take a look at what we have here. Okay, so this is this piece of equipment. Let's take a look at the work order history. Right here we have 10100 Intercell RAN work order 577. This is the first one for this piece of equipment. Okay, so I want to add this to my time card, and here we go. Now it is on my time card. I can also enter my shift here. Let's say I was the graveyard shift last night. That's ending. That ended now. Was I offered breaks? Let's hit yes, yes, and yes. Now this functionality right here that I'm showing you for the shift on the time card kind of goes into if you have union rules, or certain states like California are very specific that you have to have a shift start time, you have to offer meals, and you have to offer breaks, right? And again, this kind of just allows kind of some accountability on not only the company but also on the mechanic themselves. They're filling this out and they're saying right, that this was my shift time, this is what I worked, and this was my meal time, and I had my breaks, right? So then again, all this is stored on the time card of the manager system when it is submitted. So again, this is accountability not only for the mechanic saying, yes, I did what was required by not only the company but possibly by law, but then also it can be tracked later in the manager system if any questions arise about whether or not, right, they were offered lunch or whether or not they were offered breaks. You can also add notes not only for just the entire work order, but for the entire day. So you can say, hey, mechanic can come in and he can say, couldn't make it out to site, 0100 because there was a rain out and I couldn't get my car there. You can add notes. You can add quick phrases. So again, typing on an iPad can be a little tedious, so if guys don't like that, they can go to jobs, and they can hit, job 101, done, and then again, quick phrase, you can say work order related, work not complete. Okay, now this is just kind of speeds things up and makes it a little bit easier. You can add quick phrases to the system yourself if you want, so that if you have anything specific you need to say, or any kind of terminology that is used by your guys that is not kind of standard, you can add that in, and they can kind of hit that add quick phrase button and make the time card entry a little faster for themselves. So let's go back to this work order 577, and let's take a look. So waiting on parts, we're still open here. Let's take a look and let's enter some time. So by hitting this enter time button, this then takes me to the work items that need to be completed. So service PM1, PM3, and PM2. Now I can add my hours on the time card for this, and I can say these are on site or this is damage. These can be kind of tailored to your accounting system. So we have some customers who, if it's damage to the equipment, when it goes into their accounting system, it will be costed separately or costed to a separate account or a separate bucket for that money. And then again, on-site too. Some customers do on-site or off-site work. So if it's on-site or off-site and there's travel time involved or anything like that, right? That's a separate kind of accounting code that can then be billed separately. And again, these can all be set up in the manager system. So let's go back to, again, PM1, and just by tapping this, I can say spent 1 hour doing the PM1, and then we can go to PM2. We could say spent 4 hours doing PM2, and then PM3, we could say we did 3 hours and 2 hours overtime because we ran a little late that day because of the rain. Okay, and we'll leave these on-sites and damage off. We'll say we actually traveled. And let's see if we have anything in the backlog here. So since I'm already here, since the mechanic's already here, he can take a look at backlog. Looks like we don't have anything there that we want to add. So let's look at parts. So these were the parts that were already pulled into the iPad via the PMs being created via the manager system. So if I wanted to, all right, so we're set up to use 2. You can see quantity requested. This is what the PM is set up to actually use. So we can go through and we can say we use 2. Part location. So if you have multiple kind of part locations in your inventory, the new Mobile Mechanic 2017 allows you to select which inventory location you're pulling that part from to keep all your part inventories current. So we want to say we're at Shop 01 4th Street. Done. Now let's go again, click that, and say we used 4. Done. Power steering filter, we'll add 1. And oil filters, we'll add 2. And then again, we can change that to Pearland job box because 4th Street Shop was out. Done. Now again, mechanic has filled in all the parts he's used. He can also, again, if a part isn't listed on here that he needs, he can add a part directly from here. He can also look at referenced parts for that equipment that are set up in the manager system. So if a piece of equipment has a specific filter or any kind of specific parts only to that equipment, by hitting reference parts, the list would then filter to only parts for that piece of equipment. And again, selecting part is as simple as selecting it from these drop downs and the quantity involved. He could also, if the part wasn't in inventory and he had to buy it, like we spoke about before, he could hit add receipt, type in what was purchased, the cost, take a receipt photo, and then any other information he wanted to put in here, hit done, and that will then be added to the work order, not only the photo of the receipt, a description of what he bought, but also that cost will then be associated with the work order, just like a direct costing in the manager system. Okay. So let's go back and let's hit work complete. And then while I was on that site, I also wanted to create a work order. So let's create a work order directly from scratch from the Mechanic mobile system. So by hitting this plus work order again, and then instead of selecting from the list that we have, we can also just hit create work order. So by selecting create work order, it kind of gives us this blank slate. So we can say priority was green, status is open, and then again, let's select our pieces of equipment. And again, we can select equipment ID, job ID, or shop ID, but let's stick with equipment. And let's do 01100. Okay, so it's at shop 02 Ace Repair. And let's say we needed to inspect vehicle track. Okay. Time, so we can add work items. We can do an inspect of the front differential. And I'll just say front. Okay. Now we can also look for backlog items. So we also need to inspect the hydraulic system. That was from the 3rd. So again, something, we're already looking at the track. We're already looking at kind of the track system. So we might as well look at the hydraulic braking system as well. So I'm going to add this to the work order. There we go. Enter parts, any parts used. So if I want to add some parts, let's see if this has any reference parts specific. Yep. Let's take a look at the power steering filter. Let's add that. It's from the Main Street shop. And we'll do a quantity of 1. And the item code for billing will be brake system. Hit done. And there you go. We can also add some photos to this work order. So I've already taken some photos. So let's take a look here. Okay. And then we can add one more. There we go. So now we have these photos of this Tonka truck that's directly outside, right, that can illustrate kind of what we're looking at right here with the drivetrain. We can also add some notes if we needed to, which we've kind of gone over before. Now we can also, now this is not a PM, but we can still do meter readings here. So if we wanted to enter a meter reading, this is also going to show, by tapping meter readings, we can enter a meter reading with this work order or an odometer reading. It is also going to show the last meter reading from the piece of equipment. So we can go with, let's go with 7,000. Done. And that is automatically going to pull today's date. Time. Let's enter some time for that work. 2. And spec brake system will say it's 0.5. Okay. We'll hit work complete. Go back. Now with this PM work order, this 577, that was a PM, we never entered meter readings. So in the past, the manager system had to enter meter readings for PMs. The mechanic could enter a meter reading, but it would not attach itself to the PM without actually the manager system doing that. We've changed that. Some customers have requested that the mechanics actually be able to add meter readings in on work orders themselves. So we've changed that now. So let's take a look. We can hit this tap to our meter reading. And we can add a meter reading, and then we can select which service is associated with that meter reading. So if you guys have used the manager system, you'll know that if you have multiple PMs on a work order, you can actually put multiple meter readings in and attach those to the different PMs on one work order. You can do the same thing here, or again, you can just attach the same meter reading to all of the PMs that they're done all at the same time. So let's go with 1400. And select, click on all of them, and then hit done. And it's going to give me this warning that I cannot enter an hour meter lower than the previous one. So all those interlocks that were built in the manager system are still built in the system. So let's fix that. And we'll do 14,000, which will work. Then hit done. And now those meter readings that we just put in on today's date will then be put into the manager system. And then again, update the PMs as necessary. So we hit work complete, okay? So now we can see we have a status of entered for Mobile Mechanic. So when the status is an entered status, it means that the mechanic is putting items onto the time card. Basically, you could say that the time card is in use or in creation, right, by the mechanic. So when it is in the entered mode, after I sync, if I hit this sync button, right, it's now going to send this to the manager system. So then if we look at the manager system, we could see here, if we look at work order 577, you can see we have 2 mechanics. I have spent 10 hours on it. I marked it work complete. It has these PMs. It has the times I put on the work order. It has the parts associated with it. And it has these service meter readings that I have attached to the work order for those PMs. Right, so completed services. So this is coming in directly from the mechanic. Now again, if that doesn't work, the manager can always update that and say those were the wrong meter readings and change it back. It's still in the power of the manager system to fix that if necessary, but this kind of gives your mechanics the ability to kind of help you out and not kind of give you some tedious work if you have hundreds of work orders coming in. So this puts a little more power in the mechanic's hands, but again, the manager system still has the ability to override that if there's any questions involved. Okay, so now if we look, we and the manager system cannot edit this. One second here, let me go to the review time cards. So we can take a look for today, and we can see that the status for my time card is an entered status for today. So I can see everything that I've done. I can see the time put in, but I cannot, in the manager system, edit this in any way until it is actually submitted by the mechanic. So I can see what is happening. I can see the shift breakdown. I can see kind of what he said he did, any notes, but I cannot actually change that until it is submitted. And you can see down here on the bottom, if you look bottom left-hand corner, the legend is entered. In review, which would be the mechanic submitted it. Approved, which is this green kind of thumbs up, meaning that I, the manager, have said, yes, all these are good. Rejected, which we'll get to in a little bit, which is kind of the thumbs down, which then gets sent back to the mechanic if the manager system finds that there's something wrong. And then exported is when it's already exported to accounting. So let's come back here and let's submit this time card, and we'll show kind of the life of the time card after it's already submitted. So the submit button here, and hit that, and then that gets sent up to the manager system. So pending time cards just updated. Here I am, 7:20. I sent this in 10.5 hours. It's waiting for approval. So if I go to review time cards, now I can either go to review time card screen, which you've already seen, or I can just click directly on that. Pops this up. Now, in the manager system, I can take a look and I can say, okay, I can take a look at the work orders they worked on, the equipment, the name, again, the codes, everything here. Damage, but I could say, wait a minute. He didn't spend 4 hours and 3 hours on that. That's not correct. He spent about, I was with him, he spent 2 hours on that and 1 on that. So now, in the manager system, because it has been entered, I could directly edit that and fix that myself. However, as a process, we recommend that the managers not do that and to kind of train the guys to get it right the first time. So instead of editing this myself, and if you're a small shop with 1 to 2 mechanics, maybe that's faster. But if you're a larger company with 10 to 20, maybe 100, you really don't want to set the standard of if a guy sends in a messed up time card that the manager's going to fix it for him. It's not a good standard to set. So what we're going to do is we are going to say, we're going to reject this time card here, and we're going to say that PM2 and PM3 hours are off. So I'm going to hit reject, and then it's going to ask me why. And I'm going to say PM three hours not correct. So by doing this, we're rejecting that time card, sends it back to the mechanic as rejected with the notes as to why, to have them fix it. And again, we prefer this process because we want to make sure that the mechanics take ownership of their time card and make sure that it is correct when it sends it to the manager system to kind of relieve some of that burden on the manager. So now, however, that the status is rejected, the manager system can no longer affect this time card. I can't edit this anymore, right? And you can see we have a red thumbs down. So this is an indicator of, hey, it was rejected, it gets sent back to the mechanic. So now if I look at the mechanic system and I hit the sync data, it's going to send those changes, and you'll see up here that this in review will say rejected, and you'll see it'll pop up a notification saying, hey, your time card was rejected. That's one of the newer features added. We found that prior to that, sometimes mechanics would get rejected time cards and they wouldn't be able to, they'd have to look back at the day and see that something was rejected. So we wanted to make that a little clearer, so we kind of added this, time cards rejected. So you can see right here, just as I said, status is rejected, time cards rejected here. So I can click on this, see what day, then I can look at the notes, and I can see what was added by the manager system. So time card is rejected by Keith Adams on 7:20, PM2 and PM3 hours are not correct. So as the mechanic, I could say, okay, well then let me fix that. So if we go back, and by clicking on the work order again, because now I have control over my time card again. After I've already submitted it, the mechanic no longer can edit it, but since it was rejected and brought back to me, I can now edit my hours. So I can go back, and I can go back to enter time, and I could say, yep, so I'm now going to edit these 2 hours here, edit that, and we'll change that to 2, and we'll change this to 3, okay, and then head back. And now, when I hit submit again, by hitting submit again, it's now going to send that back to the manager system. When I send it back to the manager system, it's going to say in review again, and then it's going to lock out the mechanic from entering or editing anything else on this time card. And it's going to allow the manager system again to edit that because it's in review and back in the manager system's hand. So we can see here in review, and that little note that we had one rejected time card is now gone. So let's take a look at the manager system. And let's update this. And again, here we go. So again, I can just click on this right here, and I'm now back in review. Hours are correct, and I can then approve it. In 2017, we added multi-step approval. So if you just have one person approving your time cards, you can set it up like that. You can also set up 3 different levels of approval. So if you have a shop approval, a general manager approval, and say an accounting approval, they can all go through and add that approval as a kind of final say. So here, again, if you look at status review, we can also do a status history. So if there's any questions, sometimes work orders open for a really long time, they get open, they get closed, a lot of things can happen. So if you look in status review, you can actually see all the changes that were made. So entered, review, rejected, and then review again. So now I can go through and I could say, yep, all that looks good. I want to accept that. You can also set up permission levels to, as it's set up now, I can accept all of them. You can set up permission levels to specific users. So again, if you had this set up to the general manager, shop manager, and maybe accounting, each one of those could be set up to only be able to approve their own approval level. But so I want to approve that. I'm going to hit save here. And there we go. Okay, so now that is an approved time card. It cannot be edited by the mechanic again. So, and then if we go back, if I hit sync data, we're going to see that the status is going to change to approved, and then we can also look and see that on the calendar as well. So here we go. Okay, so again, we see approved, we see that locked. That means that I can't change anything on here again. But if I go again back to the calendar, I can see approved, approved, in review, and entered. And again, we can, if I go back to this calendar, I can see today was approved, yesterday was approved, the 18th is still in review, and the 17th is entered. So again, as a mechanic, I can go through, and if it's entered, I can still go back and I can take a look at what I did on the 17th, right? I can, if I didn't complete my time card for that day, I can go back and I can fill it in later and send it in. So we went over the life cycle of a time card. We went over how to search for work orders, find a work order that was already set up by the manager system, like this one, 577, already set up, how to enter time on that. We went over entering parts, not only entering parts, but also from different shop locations. We went over adding photos and notes, marking work complete, and then we went over actually creating a work order directly from the iPad itself. So inspect vehicle track. We went over, again, same things, entering time, parts, photos, and notes on that. And then we went over how to search for that and the life of a work order through the manager system.